running's about it being elastic. And all running is throwing around elastic energy from joint to joint.
My guest today is Jay Dicharry. Jay is a board-certified sports clinical specialist, physical therapist, biomechanics, researcher, and one of the most respected voices in running mechanics and injury prevention. He's also the author of Running Rewired, the quintessential book on running mechanics and injury prevention that reframe a lot of my thinking about running.
You have lots of people out there who say, oh, you have to land under your body as you run. Well, hold on. You actually need to contact slightly in front of your body. And the reason you do that, you have to absorb energy first to store energy in your tendons. And the tendons are storing and releasing, storing, releasing elastic energy.
In this episode, we go deep into what actually drives running economy, durability, and long-term performance. We talk about why running is less about muscles and more about elastic energy, and how small changes in posture and form can deliver bigger performance gains than super shoes, gadgets, or biohacks.
What we found was running economy changed by as much as 8% just by changing postural orientations.
We also unpack how masters athletes can build a body that stays healthy and resilient as we age, and what to prioritize if time and energy are limited.
I'm going to make every coach in the whole world angry because I'm going to give you an entire training methodology in like 3 minutes. What you need from a physiological training perspective, you need one.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Jay Dicharry on the Endurance Lab podcast. Jay, if someone just clicked on this podcast or this video and they're discovering you for the first time, could you kind of describe what you do professionally in the running space, the kind of athletes that you currently or have previously worked with, and how do you help them get better?
On paper, right, I'm a physio or a physical therapist, depending on how you like to call a profession. I'm a professor. I'm an author. But in reality, I'm the guy people call when you get hurt and you can't find answers, or when things aren't going okay and you wonder, hey, can I squeak out a few seconds here or a few minutes here or whatever. So it's confusing, right? Because people are like, what do you do? I'm like, I don't know. I just help people. Like I'm a cog in a wheel, right? Like you call me, I'm here to help. I think that's, I really don't, to be honest, I don't really like labels a lot because I feel like if you say you're a physio, you sort of say, I'm only going to help you if you're hurt, right? And if you're a coach, then you say, I'm only looking to help you get better. And I think that that's not really helpful because you're a person. You're not a diagnosis and you're not a training plan. You're a person. And I really feel like, as far as what I do, my goal is to leave no stone unturned, right? Like when people come to me and they say, hey, I've had this thing on my right side for the past, year it's been going on, and sometimes it's IT band, sometimes it's foot pain, and sometimes it's, my knee, whatever. It's like, I don't care. Like and I'm not being mean, but I don't care about the symptoms. I care about why are things going down this toilet bowl, right? Why are the same things showing up again and again? And so my job is to sort of uncover where those rate limiting factors are, right? And they might be in terms of injury, or they might be in terms of performance, or both, right? Like so many times, like inefficiencies that we see wind up creating imbalances and can lead to tissue stress. But sometimes imbalances can also affect the quality of the way you move and thus your times. So that's the fun part, I think, is trying to distill down as far as what do we need to work on, right? And so I love working with elites and I love working with grandma, right? Like I love working with everybody. Seriously, I'm not joking. Like it's like, people say, oh, it must be fun to work with elites. Like they just have really good genetics, right? Like, and they have a lot of time, and in some cases, life is easier for them than not elites, right? So, again, like, I'm a big fan of just trying to find out how can I help you, and I think that's the biggest thing I look at.
Is it fair to say that you kind of look at it through the lens of a physio, even though the kind of work you do is a bit more broad?
It is fair, but I'd say a physio who's been around the block for a long time and torched everything he learned in school. I'm serious. Like, so I'll tell you a quick story, right? So I went to PT school, right? And I learned a bunch of stuff in school, and, I'm old, right? So, we went to school, and I got out of school, and I spent the first like 3 to 5 years of my career being really frustrated because all the stuff I learned in school didn't really play out in the clinic. And it was very frustrating to me because I tell you what, like, I hate investing a lot of time into something and not seeing a benefit. It's just me. And I spent so much time and effort to learn all this stuff. And getting out of school and seeing, wait, this doesn't play out how it was told. It was very frustrating for me. And so the kind of technical part of my career is I wound up running a gait and biomechanics lab for the better part of my career. And so it wasn't just looking at things and saying, oh, I have pain, and fine, do this exercise. It was like getting very, very specific as far as evaluating this, like, to the 10th of a millimeter, or like, 10th of a foot pound, if we're talking about kinematics, right? So, or kinetics, like all these different factors, and trying to find out where are those leaks, right? How can we sort of solve those problems? So I think that I would say I look at things from a basic science perspective, because research guides our thought process, but research doesn't tell us how to help you, because you weren't a subject in that research study, right? And so
yeah, exactly.
I think that you really have to be able to take the global sort of, didactic knowledge database, but then interpret that to, hey, who's the athlete in front of me, right? Like, what are their goals? Like, I'm literally irrelevant. I tell everybody, like, people laugh, like, no, you're not. Like, no, I am. Like, no one cares about me. They care about how they do with this plan or performance progression or whatever you put together, right? And so my goal is to make sure that works for you, right? Or works for whoever's in front of me. And so that's the I think the more challenging part is not to understand research and yell at people about research studies, and not to understand, well, fine, clinical experience always says this, but like, how do I take those worlds and distill them down to something that is relevant to your life and your situation? Because I feel like that's what a lot of people miss, right? Like, there are some people who have 30 hours a week to work on things, and there's some people who have 2. And those are 2 completely different scenarios. And, there are some people who have, very specific goals, and have more broad goals. And so I'd say that, the lens you look at things isn't just like the lens that I'm looking at. I'm also looking at my patient's lens or my athlete's lens as well, because I feel like you really have to do that, because so many times people say the cue, open up your stride, right? Now, that's a great cue. I love that cue. The intent of that would be to tell someone, hey, you're taking a bunch of short, choppy steps. I'd like you to try and push up more at the backside. That's kind of the intent of that cue. But if that athlete doesn't understand the difference between hip control and spine control, they might wind up increasing their stride length from arching their low back every single step. And that's not helpful, right? So again, like, I'm really picky about the way that not only like I think about the goals from athletes, but how the athlete or patient in front of me interprets that. That's really, really important, because I have to use their language, their, so everything around them, like, what does their world look like? I really feel like we have to get that across. And I feel like that's where my profession certainly fails multiple times, right? And when I'm talking to my students, I tell my students, like, look, your patients don't care what you know. They care if you can take what you know, make it relevant in their life
to them.
Then you've bridged that gap, right? Then everybody's happy and people get it. And I think that's what I try to get my athletes understand, is that, like, hey, look, I know you signed up for this race. You have this pressure you're putting on yourself. Maybe you've got some teammates or co-pressures, right, to kind of balance off of. But I really want to make sure that we can take what you need to do and make it actionable with your current situation. And that's really, really hard, but that's where we are right now, right? I mean, nobody needs to read more research. Like, we need to do a better job with applying what we have right now, right? Like, I do research, right? I mean, I like it, but it's like, again, it doesn't tell me how to treat you.
Yeah, you mentioned a while ago about a certain segment of athletes that come to you to improve by a few percent. And I hear you talking about how by improving movement and mechanics, a runner can essentially improve their running economy by anywhere between, is it 1 to 8%? And, that's kind of mind blowing, because if you think about super shoes, the best that it can do right now is about 4 to 5%. And just by improving mechanics, and you can, assuming we get to the high end of it, of 8%, that's a lot. And, if we frame it in terms of a 4-hour marathoner, that's about 18 minutes faster. So you essentially, at the same metabolic load, you are running 18 minutes faster, finishing at, say, 3 hours, 42 minutes. What actually drive those gains biomechanically? How are you tracking your fat loss? Because losing weight doesn't always mean that you're losing fat. It can also mean that you're losing muscle. And that's the last thing you want. Lately, I've been using the Body Pod by Hume Health, and it's quickly becoming part of my morning routine. As the world's first portable body analyzer, it measures your body composition with medical-grade accuracy right from home. It honestly feels like having one of those $20,000 full-body DEXA scanners used in clinics. What I appreciate most is that it doesn't stop at a single number. It shows how your muscle mass and body fat are trending day by day, broken down by region, and it even distinguishes between subcutaneous and visceral fat. That gives you a much clearer picture of what's actually changing inside your body. If you want to try it, use the link below with my code ENDURANCELAB for 20% off. It also stacks with Hume's current sale for up to 50% total savings. And if you're in the US, it's HSA and FSA eligible, which means your insurance may even cover it. Huge thanks to Hume Health for sponsoring this video. If you're over 40 and still training like you're 25, that's exactly why you're stuck, injured, or constantly fatigued. I know because I've been there. Most runners think the answer is more intensity, harder sessions, bigger workouts, something that looks impressive on Strava. That's not how you improve, especially as a midlife runner. You don't need more hero workouts. You need steady progression, small, repeatable gains, week after week. Nothing extreme, nothing flashy, just consistent increases that compound over time. Consistency beats intensity every time. This approach took me from a complete beginner to a sub 20-minute 5K, a 40-minute 10K, and a 3:05 marathon, all within just 2 years in my late 40s. No magic workouts, no burnout cycles, just structured progression that builds. If you want real measurable progress, then you need a structured plan for this stage of your life. That's why I've created simple structured training plans for 5K, 10K, half, and full marathon, each aligned to specific goal finish times designed for midlife runners. Just pick your goal, follow the plan, and build week by week. You'll find them through the link below. What actually drives those gains biomechanically?
Yeah, the biggest thing, so one of my good friends is Carrie Lane. She and I teach together all the time. And, she has the best, like, you want to sum up running real quick? It's the most beautiful statement ever. All running is throwing around elastic energy from joint to joint. And it's the nail on the head, right? That's all. Running's about it being elastic. Okay. And I'd say there's a few parts in here where I wish more people really understood. People think all about muscles. Like when you're at distance running, right? So for most of the talk today, for everything we talk about, we're talking about the running slower than a 4-minute mile pace. Okay. Because once you get in middle distance, things do change a little bit. And we can talk about that too, but, at steady state above, if you're an adult male in the 1.7 or even an adult female, like, let's say 1.58 meters or so, slower than a 4-minute pace. We're talking about distance running steady state. Okay. So if we can make those assumptions, when you're running, your muscles actually aren't changing in length a whole lot. Your muscles actually stay very isometric. They hold position. And the tendons are the big rubber bands, and the tendons are storing and releasing elastic energy. And so a few things sort of come into this, right? So one of them is, I always talk about the idea that if you imagine you have a slingshot, okay? And if I said fire a rock off a slingshot, the first thing you have to do is what?
Pull it,
well, right?
Put the rock in.
Yes, put the rock in. Yes. But you have to store energy in a slingshot first, right? And that's what you have to do when you run, right? So you have lots of people out there who say, "Oh, you have to land under your body as you run." Well, hold on. Remember, you have to store energy. So when you're running again at steady state speed, you actually need to contact slightly in front of your body. Okay, and the reason you do that, you have to absorb energy first to store energy in your tendons, so that you can release it in the backside, right? So we have like the absorption phase and then a power generation phase we run. And so that's really easy to say, and it's hard to do, okay? Because you have to have a very good strategy and you have to have a good capacity, okay? And let's sort of break those two things down. If you saw me in the gym and I had a 25-pound dumbbell in my hand and I was pressing it over my head, and every single time I came down, I whacked myself in the head every time, you would probably say this person is not safe, right? They don't have the ability to control that weight. They're going to kill themselves. Okay. Now, that might be true. Right? So if you saw me in the gym and I was taking a weight and pressing it up over control and down with control, that would be better, right? And so, runners aren't falling all over the place, right? But the reality is a lot of people don't have good skill control in the way they counter-rotate their upper body and lower body, their arm swing mechanics, the ability to rotate their hip and their pelvis, the ability to, to pronate and supinate under control, the ability to absorb and dampen loads of the right joint in the right amount, right? So we're talking about things that need to be very reflexive, right? Like when you run, like you shouldn't be thinking about 20 things, like maybe like one or two things form wise at a time, but that's it. I never tell people to do more than that because it's very cognitive, right? So when you have to think about too much, you slow down, your movement economy gets messed up, right? So I keep things really simple, but the reality is like, you have to practice things in a very like reflexive way, right? And so that skill piece isn't something you spend like one day on for 5 minutes. Like you have to invest some time into that in building skill control over all those parts we talked about, being able to counter rotate, being able to stabilize. Postural control is a really big one. We can talk about that a lot today. But those things are really, really important, right? And then if you do that well, meaning the skill piece, then you have the tissue capacity piece, right? So then you talk about, can your muscles actually maintain that stable position to keep your body aligned very well under fatigue? Because runners get tired, right? And so, it cracks up. Most runners say, oh, I'm going to go, run this big, long event or, fast pace, whatever. I'm like, what are you doing for your strength work? And like, oh, I do some banded clamshells. Like, great. That's a point of entry, right, to start with one day. But like, if you're sitting there and you're telling me you're running, 80K a week and you're doing clamshells, your strength plan, that's not near enough to really upregulate your tissue capacity, right? So, I think you need to kind of peel back a little bit and look at, am I preparing my body for the demands of running? Because running is really hard. Like it's not, people say, oh, I just put my shoes on and go. Yeah, from a gear standpoint, it's easy, but from a running well standpoint, it's pretty hard, right? And so, coming back to this economy piece, right? It comes back to, can you steer your body with control, even when you're tired? And can you maintain that spring, right? Can you be very spring off the ground? And if you can, then you store and release elastic energy just like you should, and you move very efficiently, okay? But do you mind if we talk about posture a little bit now? Because I can roll this in here a little bit.
Yeah, of course. Talk about anything. Yeah.
So let's talk about this because this is a study I was asked to do. So years ago for a conference, somebody asked me to give a talk on the influence of upper body mechanics on running. And there was like literally 3 papers out. That was it. There was not much. So I said, okay, instead of worrying about there's no papers, let's just do real life, right? So I have a gait lab. Okay. So I had people come in. I said, hey, Justin, you come run. I'm going to put a bunch of sensors on you and you run. And I got baseline data on you in terms of power output and movement efficiency, all kinds of parameters I won't bore you with. Okay. And I said, Justin, do me a favor. I'm going to hold it at the same speed. All I want you to do is lean backwards me a little bit. And I captured data there. And I said, Justin, same speed. Do me a favor. I want you to lean forward a little bit. Okay. And I captured data there. And then I just looked at numbers. Okay, did that for a whole group of people. And what we found was those numbers you mentioned, you can basically, if I look at your sort of zero position, right, just by having you lean too far forward or too far back, and I didn't have people move far, by the way. I said like a little bit back and a little bit forward. We saw movement economy, running economy change by as much as 8% just by changing posture orientations. Now, some of you may go, oh, well, you're forcing people to change positions. Do me a favor. At your next race, I want you to have a friend film you right when the gun goes off, when you're fresh and you look good, and have one of your friends film you halfway through the race, 3/4 of the way through the race, and about 200 meters from the finish line. You don't look the same. Okay. Your body looks you don't, no one does, right? You get tired.
Yeah.
And so we know you're going to get tired. And most people aren't preparing for it. There's a really good footage. Actually, when I teach, I show this video. This is from the NCAA, the Collegiate Track and Field Championship race in the States. This is from like 8 years ago. It's a long time ago, but it's a really great video. It's 800 meters, and the gun goes off, and 8 people run, and they all look perfect at 100 meters, 200 meters, 400 meters, 600, like head stacked over torso stacked over pelvis, like landing exactly. It looks great, right? Nobody has anything negative to say. They're running an 800 meter race, not a 600 meter race. With 200 meters to go, 4 of the people in the field get tired to the point where their ribs flare up, they arch their back, and they start to now contact further in front of their body. And
which means that their legs are reaching further forward.
They're reaching further forward. So even if they didn't reach their legs further forward, just the fact they leaned backwards, their posture went back in terms of where their point of contact was,
Correct.
right?
Relative to the legs, yeah.
Within a few strides, 4 people are out the TV frame, out the TV cameras, okay? 4 people come across the line, 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you think those runners who, the back of the pack, would have liked to have known they should pay attention to running economy, posture orientation, leg swing dynamics, because they lost? Like literally they were like in front and they were out the frame of the TV cameras within a few strides because they're running a less efficient way. So some people might say, well, I don't run 800 meters. Fine. You may run a half marathon, a 50K, whatever, right? Like if I know you're training and you're quote fit, but if you're running in a way that's causing you to not to be very efficient, you're losing seconds, if not minutes, in the clock over the course of your race, right? And so I think that's what I like to look at when you look at this idea behind running economy. You know, there's lots of things we can talk about, some more aspects that kind of play into this, but you need to check all the boxes, right? And again, this is collegiate championship. These are very, people work their whole life for this. But my point is, if I go back 10 years ago, almost every race has at least half the field falling apart towards, the halfway of the later distance of the race. Everybody is. The coolest thing I've ever seen in my career was this past Olympics. Because if you watch the Olympics, the one in Paris,
okay,
I watched every single event, prelims, semis, and finals. I saw 3 athletes. I won't call them out, but I saw 3 athletes, the entire males and females, who I would say had form breakdown under fatigue. Everyone else looked perfect across the line. And that has not happened until this year's Olympic Games. And I and some of my colleagues have been like raising hell about this for a long time, right? Like trying to get people to pay attention to these tiny details. People are like, everybody wants to biohack this crazy stuff. Like, yeah, this thing might get you 0.1% improvement, but what might get you a huge improvement is making sure you don't fatigue as much, right? Like, or if you're going to fatigue, be aware of these things. So I really try, and again, like going back to what we said to open this with, like, what are your limiting capacities, right? They're different than your training partners and your friends and your moms or dads or whatever, right? Like we have to look at things very uniquely. And I think if you can really find out like, hey, what are the issues that this person's had over and over again, right? Like where are those leaks we can find? So somebody says, hey, I just want to try and find some time on the clock. And this happens to me all the time, right? Like people have, I might have had injuries in the past. I'm totally fine right now, but I want to try and get some extra time off. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's talk about your training because we have to talk about the physiology. But from the biomechanics side, like what might be suspect, right? And we have to kind of break that down and find out, where those leaks are and how to make a plan to improve them. More importantly,
let's go back a bit to talk about the tendons and the story of the elastic energy in the tendons.
Mm-hmm.
And I also understand that you have your muscle contraction, right? And the combination of these two is what kind of drives you forward. And you've talked about a percentage allocated to each side, the muscular side and the storing and releasing of energy on the tendon side. Is there a aspired percentage ratio between the two that a runner should ideally aim towards? And what does an inefficient runner look like?
Yeah, so you look at running, roughly half the energy, you look at breaking down propulsion, right? Like actually moving forward, half the energy comes from active muscle control and roughly half it comes from storing, releasing elasticity. Okay. At steady state speed. It's assuming you're holding a given pace and just running at the same pace. So, so roughly half and half, right? So the problem becomes when we see, and again, this is the thing, you can't say it's always due to weak muscles, or maybe it's always due to strategy, maybe it's a combination of both, right? Like I think about the body as a grandfather clock, okay? So grandfather clocks are tall, skinny clocks, a pendulum that swings back and forth.
Yeah.
Right? So if that grandfather clock is straight, that's kind of how your postural control should be. Does that make sense? Like you should be aligned with your head over your shoulders, shoulders over your hips, and then hips, roughly over your feet at mid-stance. Okay. So you can imagine if I take that grandfather clock and lean it backwards, right? Well, I've got a situation now where the base of me is in front of the tip, right? Or if I lean it the other way, okay, that also causes problems if the tip is in front of the base, right? So that's why I'm saying that postural control element comes in really important. The other thing that's important is the pendulum itself, right? So your leg swing should swing roughly in front of you and roughly back the same. If you look at your foot, that kind of the angle that your foot scribes beneath you. Now you have a knee in there, it complicates things a little bit. I don't want to get too techie, but think about, for a general aspect, if you can keep your grandfather clock straight and upright and keep that pendulum swinging front to back, you're going to land where you should, and you're going to keep your body stacked, as I call it, stacking the boxes kind of. You'll be in good alignment, and you'll run as well as you can with your current training, right? So when you talk about breaking this down into like, where are those leaks? Maybe you have a problem where your core stability, kind of gets fatigued first, and that causes you to lean forward. Like, go to any high school cross country race. What do you see? The last 200 meters, people are coming across, like, their arms are flailing, right? Their backs flopping around, like, or maybe you've got a problem where your knee muscles actually fatigue out, right? And so we know that one way to unload the knees is to lean forward. Maybe you're leaning forward your torso because you lost the ability to control your knees in your 50K, right? Like, there's a number of reasons why people might have breakdown form complications. That's what I'm saying. You have to look at, okay, well, they're doing this, but why, right? Like, maybe they're core fatigued, or maybe they're knee muscles fatigued. Both of them are going to force somebody to adopt a forward flex position for two different reasons. So I think that it's a great question as far as like, what do people do when they get tired? I'd say they start to change their form. And so those form imbalances then change that spring, right? We talked about, if you just take a spring, you want to squish it and release it. Squish it, release it. You don't want to take it and like push it down more than it needs to and then release it, right? And you don't want to push it on halfway and then help it up, right? You want to have it be nice and explosive. And so when you talk about plyos, plyos are, which is kind of, we do 10 plyos for plyometrics, yes. Yeah, so plyometric movements, right? So plyometrics are a wonderful way to work on the spring dynamic. I also crack up at people. Like, I was at the gym last night and I saw this high school kid. He was doing plyos 100% perfectly. I was like, literally shocked, because I can never usually say that. Most people, when they do plyos, they are spending way too much time on the ground. They're like just hanging out on the ground, like, the difference there isn't me being picky. The difference is we have to get people to be springy, right? Mm-hmm. And most people doing plyos are still trying to muscle their way through the plyos. Okay. And the thing is, like, I'll give you numbers to be specific on this, right? So if you're running, okay, so let's say your height and weight, roughly, if you're running a zone 3, kind of just cruise pace, right? Yeah. Not tempo, just a cruise pace, okay? So
kind of marathon pace.
Yeah, your time on ground, for your height, your weight, is roughly going to be about 0.19 to about 0.24 seconds, okay? That's a time on ground for each step of your entire race, okay, or entire run. Mm-hmm. If we're doing plyos, for performance benefit, I need to train in the window that you're at to get those benefits to transfer into your running. So maybe break this down for a second. If I said, let's have you get as strong as you can, okay? So let's say we're doing a squat. I said, just want to put 100 pounds on your back. You're like, okay, great, I did 8. I'm going to put 200 pounds on your back. Great, you did it or didn't do it. No one times you on a squat, right? Like, you can take 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. No one cares. Okay. Right. So strength happens independent of time. Okay, so strength does not correlate to power. Strength looks at reserve, right, but not how explosive you are. That's great, and I love training strength. Runners should train strength. There are several meta studies shown that you can improve running economy by becoming stronger. It's 100% true. But if you're doing plyos, I need your time on ground to be in that window of that, like, 0.19 to 0.24 seconds. That makes sense? Like, otherwise, you're not really training explosive reaction control, okay, power. Okay. And so the thing I see is people, like, when I'll say do 40 plyos, and if you just jump in, they just do 40 jumps. I'm like, hold on, stop. 40 total plyos. I want you to do sets of 4, because I need you to get on off the ground super, super fast, right? Because I need to train your nervous system to absorb and explode off with that recoil as fast as possible. And that's not strength. That's teaching your brain to recruit quickly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And can I just really interrupt and ask you a very quick question? Sure. So, based on everything that you just said, is it fair that plyo training with plyo would be a good way to enhance the elastic return in our tendons. Is that one of the ways, or is that the main 100%. Way to do it? Okay.
It is
so if somebody wants
to,
improve the efficiency, well, not efficiency, but the way their tendons store and release energy, plyo,
right,
as it really fast, like on the ground and off, would be one of the best ways to do that. And broken down into a few movements and then a break and then a few movements, so they don't fatigue the muscles and they focus on the storing and the release of energy and not on the muscles trying to get them off the ground. Totally. Is it fair to say that?
Totally. It's fair. It's perfect to say that. Let's dig deep in here. This is actually perfect. This is definitely one of the actionable things here, right? So if I said we're going to run 10 200s tonight at the track, you would probably want to break between all of them, right? Because you can't run 10 200s sequentially at a fast, but you have to take a break. That's how long you think about your plyo training. If I say do 40, I'm never asking you to do 40 continuously. And no one can, right? Because you have to go off the ground quick, okay? And so the problem with plyos is people either make them too easy, meaning they're not really mentally ready, just kind of, happily bouncing back and forth and not doing anything with intent. Or they'll use boxes, right? And the problem is social media has made running training so hard because people want to do, box jumps and jump to the height of their waist or their chest or whatever, like all this like stuff. It looks cool. Okay. If you ask me to jump up on a box that's chest high, I can do this. Okay, I can. But guess what? For me to do that, I have to lower way down and I have to raise way back up again. And my time on ground is over 0.3 seconds. Mm-hmm. That's not training power. That's training strength. Does that make sense? So
yes,
if we want to train power, I need you to go off the ground fast. I never, ever, ever have my athletes do plyometrics with a box height higher than their knee. Ever. Okay. And the reason why is because as the box goes, as the platform you're jumping off of comes higher, you spend more time on ground. I need you to go off the ground faster. Does that make sense? So I'd rather work on minimizing time on ground at all costs. And then we can play with the height of the box jump as an external cue, kind of give you almost like some motivation to get to a target, right? But that's not my, I don't care about that, right? I have athletes I work with who are elites that do box height that are probably, mid shin, and I have athletes that do under knee height. I don't care how high the box is. I just need them off the ground fast. Okay. And so that's the kind of thing you're building that reflexive ability, right? So when you think about it, if I said get off the ground in less than 0.1 second, which is the stance time, if you're looking at like current world record holders in the 100 meter, right? Like those are really, really fast contact times. You don't have time to think, store, absorb, release. Like, it's just like, boom, I'm on off, right? And that's why I'm going to train your brain to go get off the ground. Okay. And so we train plyos when we're in a very mentally fresh state, right? So we're not tired and exhausted. So the time to do plyos is never after run when you're tired. It's before. Okay. If you want, good carryover. Again, like all the things I do, like, I don't want to just have you check boxes and do this exercise. Like no one cares about that. If I can't help you see transfer into your running, I've wasted your time. Okay. So, I want to make sure that when we look at plyos, our recipe is get it off the ground, certainly less than a quarter of a second. Okay. If you're running really fast, like if you're doing, 400 meters and 800 meter races, your contact times are going to be closer to about 0.12 to 0.14 seconds. So again, I want those contact times for your plyos to be shorter as well. Does that make sense? Like everything needs to sort of be in that window to train that capacity. That's one of the main reasons we do plyos. We also do plyos to build bone health, which is a kind of different discussion. Because there's great research to show that doing plyometrics, actually less than 0.1 seconds off the ground. So like really, really quickly. And so those, you can imagine, even with my elites, I have them use a curb, like literally just in front of your house, just a 6-inch curb. Okay.
6-inch,
whatever. 100 centimeter curb. Okay. 100 to 120 centimeter curb. Or millimeter, sorry. Just real small. Okay. But being able to get on and off quickly, because there is research to show that if you do about 40 jumps total, okay, again, total, not all at once, that hit a ground reaction force of over 3.5 times body weight, which is what you get with that same distance I just talked about. And you do those once a day, you can actually improve bone health. So it's a great recipe for bone health. But for the performance side, I typically program in about 60. I've gone as high as 120, but usually it's about 60 to 80 total jumps in a workout. Okay. Again, with plenty of breaks between each set.
Okay.
And some people, higher skilled athletes might get an 8 to 10 reps before they need a break, whereas lower level athletes might do, 2 to 4 reps before they need a break. And again, certain parts of the season and so forth, you can change that and play that, but you need to be very mentally fresh. And so plyometrics are really a great way to build that violent, sprinting capacity, right? And again, like, the whole goal of this is to cut your head off. You shouldn't have to think through this stuff. You should just feel and execute. And Plyo's done well, do a great job of that.
So can I just throw back everything that you just said? So
yeah,
just to make sure I understand it. So plyos are great for improving performance in terms of power. And you want to do plyos where you get off the ground very quickly. So the height that you jump to should not be too high. And you recommend just about the curb height, which is 6 inches or about 10 centimeters. And you want to do anywhere between 60 to 120, depending on where you are. And you want to break it up. So a newer athlete or maybe an older athlete might want to be doing about 4 or 5 in one set, taking a break and then doing a set. And you said that it should be done fresh mentally. So would doing the plyo before your run be a good warm-up?
Yes, definitely. Okay. And when I say you can sometimes do them after if it's not fatiguing, right? Certainly, I would never ask somebody to go do a tempo effort or do some speed work session and then do plyo. So that's a disaster.
Okay.
Right? Like you're just tired, right? So, but yeah, everything you said is totally spot on. It'd be better to do this kind of stuff first. If you want to run, I will say this: if you're looking for plyos to build bone, the research shows that you actually should not run before. So you need to do your plyos first, then go run. Okay. But if you're talking about from a performance side, you can do a few a mile or two or a K or two, something like that to warm up and do plyos and do your meat and potato. That's fine.
So to shoot 2 birds with 1 stone, do it before you run. So you improve tendons and you improve bone health as well.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Just get both benefits. Yeah.
Okay. And
you do better for some reason AI does.
Okay. Thank you. So that's the elastic tendon side of the equation. So if we look at the muscular side of the equation, strength training for runners.
Yeah.
And I understand that if we do a regular, typical gym style strength training program the bros do, that's not really going to help running performance. So how would you structure a simple strength training routine for a runner that wants to improve running performance, specifically for someone that's slightly older?
Yeah. So it's a great question.
I say older, it's like our age.
Yeah, totally. Right.
Yeah. Like,
yeah. So
about 50, 60, yeah.
Yep. So I think a lot of runners are worried about I might get bulky or I might get big. Like, to get big, you have to do lots of volume. Okay, like lots of volume, like lots and lots and lots. As a runner, your goal is to get in the gym. I have people do maybe 1 to 2 kind of core moves to wake up their body a little bit, right? And then we do basically about, for most folks I work with, we do about 3 quality sets, 4 exercises. That's a total of 12 sets. Sometimes it goes to 15, but that's it. And you're done. You leave the gym. You're not there for an hour or 2 hours, right? Like, so I'd say that, you talk about the old school gym bro stuff. I think that can get sort of thrown around in both ways, right? So, you don't have to do 40 different exercises for your quads. But a squat has a lot of benefit, And so, some people may say, okay, I love the squat. I've had great success with that. Awesome. Great. We may use regular double leg squats. Some people may say, you know what? Every time I squat heavy, my back hurts. And I'm like, no problem. Let's switch to a split squat variation, right? So where I'm not going to, where your leg, I can still, burn out one of your legs as much as I want to, but your spine is not going to be under near as much load because you don't have to have 300 pounds on your back, right? Like, that's totally fine. So, we can, people get all caught up in everything has to be double leg or everything has to be on single leg. Like, you should do both, right? We need variety in our movement training, right? So, I think that to look at a strength plan. So remember, the reason we're doing this, right? We said half effort comes from elasticity and half it comes from muscle control, right? So if those muscles get tired, What happens is we start to see joints move more. We start to see more excursion. And that excursion means that now my muscles are actually changing in length. And that means instead of, remember, we said muscles should kind of maintain length, but now they're moving longer. And that takes more work, more mechanical work, which takes more effort, which is why your running economy dives, right? So the faster and more rapidly you can generate your force capacity, the better you can keep that spring that we talked about earlier. And so when we talk about programming, we're looking for about let's say 4 different exercises. Okay. And I keep this pretty broad, not 4 exercises for your knees and 4 for your back and 4, keep them pretty simple. One of them should be very, what I call anterior leg focused, meaning like quad hip sort of quad focused. Then the other one's going to be a little bit more hip focused. Okay. The other one's going to be a lot of rotational power. I do a lot of rotational work with my athletes, because people don't work that enough. And then another lift, will be either going to be a heavy carry. Okay, like just holding and walking with heavy weights, or another upper body type lift. I switch it up now and again because, people think, I run with my legs. Yeah, I know, but your upper body does have a big sort of, again, building that kind of innate awareness between upper and lower body linking is really, really critical. So 3 sets, 4 exercises. I would say one thing is, most runners aren't going hard enough in the gym. Okay. And certainly if you're starting out, don't just relax, okay? But if you're somebody who's been lifting for a long time and feel like you're just sort of going through the motions, doing the same thing all the time, if you're taking less than 2 minutes of rest per set, you're not going heavy enough. And I think that's really important for people to hear. So you should, imagine if you did a quarter on the track. I said, all right, go ahead a quarter. And you're like, I can do another with 2 seconds rest. I'm like, if you can go already, you didn't run hard enough, right? Like, it's that simple. So the same thing, if you're at the gym and you're doing, let's say I give you, a split squat and you say, let's do body weight. That's better than nothing, but my goal is to put a sufficient load that muscle to get some type of response to get your body to heal and upregulate and build back better. And we have to make sure we're loading the body sufficiently to do that, right? And so, this tissue of overload, this process of overload, right? Things always have to kind of be nudging the needle, moving up and up and up over time. And I think that's important. I tell my athletes, look, if you're able to do a set within 2 minutes, you didn't go heavy enough, right? So, making sure your intent is there is really critical. And times per week, right? We said the exercises, the sets, rep range. Sorry. So rep range, I'm not looking to build endurance. You get that running. Okay. You don't need to worry about endurance side. Okay. For the strength side, 6 to 8 reps is typically what I'm looking at. You could go as high as 10 if you wanted to. In distance runners, I never ever go below 4. Okay, there's just not a need to. But 6 to 8 is a good sort of happy window to chase. And if you're under 30, doing one of these workouts a week is probably fine. If you're above 30, you probably should do 2 at certain points in the year. If you're 40 and older, you will get more benefit. People don't like me saying this, but you will get more benefit from doing weights twice a week than you would by, even if you have to drop a day of running. And it's not my opinion. It's been shown multiple times that running is not enough of a stress to actually build lean muscle mass. And over 40, you lose lean body mass, right? Like if I said, hey, think about the body you had when you were 25. You're like, I was super strong and super fit. I could do all these great things. And I'm like, you know what? Every day after 40, your body's gotten weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And you're still trying to go hard. You're starting to show up for yourself and train hard, but your muscles are like, I can't generate as much force. So we have to change that dynamic, right? We have to build that strength. And there's been studies to show that even men in their 90s have actually 80s have actually improved lean body mass and improved strength. So it's never too late to start this, but you do have to be consistent with it.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you said that, because I just recorded an episode with the 2025 Ironman M65-69 world champion, and he was breaking down his training schedule across the whole week during his peak training. And there was at least 2 90-minute strength training session for an endurance athlete doing an Ironman distance at that age. It might even be 3, but I definitely remember at least 2. And I was thinking to myself, wow, that's quite a lot. I think that's one thing we runners struggle with, right? To give up a running session to do strength training. I know I struggle with that. I'm a bit fortunate because right behind the camera is my squat rack.
Nice.
So I can, do
You're living it.
And then jump over there, do squats. During the 2-3 minute break, I come back to edit a video whatsoever. So I've got the space here. So basically my whole gym the pain cave is right behind the camera.
You know, it's really cool. Like I heard this. So I used to host this conference every year, and you know who Frank Shorter is by chance?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, we had Frank come and give a talk one time, and I just love his perspective. He's a legend, right? A legend of our sport.
Yeah.
And so he's up there and he's like, you know, it's hard to be a masters runner because you look at your times every day, you're like, all you see is this downhill slide, right? Like you're not getting faster. And it's like, we're wired the opposite. We all want to see progress, right? And I love his quote. He said, you know, the coolest thing about being a masters runner is that I've found another way to get progress. I can go to the gym and I'm actually getting stronger. He's like, this is when he was in his almost 60s. Like, I'm getting stronger at 60 years old. He's like, it's nice to see that as an athlete, right? Like, and I think that, you know, a lot of us as we get older, we think, oh man, I wish I was 20 again. And sure, we all do, right? But like, wouldn't it be really cool if you had a chance to get better at something, even as we age? And I think that, you know, strength training really can be that fountain of youth that makes you kind of get excited and go, oh, you know, yeah, I can't hit mile splits like I used to, but things are still getting better, right? And I think that's a nice way to think about this. Like, you know, your approach to your sport should be healthy. You should be happy to go train, and people are always happy to run. But I think that maybe just give yourself a second to kind of pan back and go, what are the goals I made for myself this year? And if every one of those, you know, if one of those goals isn't being discouraged every time you look down at your watch, like, how can I make that better? You know, I think that opening yourself up to the idea behind putting in consistent work and strength training is important. One of my simplest hacks, okay, for runners is to get a sheet of paper and literally just draw a grid on it, okay? And at the end of the month, I want you to put a mark on there, whether you did some kind of a stability work or strength work or whatever, right? And put it on that grid. And at the end of the month, if you have 2 check boxes on that grid, you didn't really do anything, okay? But at the end of the month, if you've got, you know, multiple checks per week, if you've been showing up for yourself, you know, 2 or 3 times a week for, you know, months on end, those people typically don't recognize themselves from when they were, you know, before they started this. Like, wow, I feel better, right? Like the way I'm holding myself posture wise is better. I'm not getting as tired with runs. That speed work session that used to crush me for 4 days after, I'm fine after 1 or 2 days now, right? Like those are transformative changes. And I'll just say this, if you're somebody who's on the fence, never in my life have I gotten an athlete who's been against strength training that I've kind of convinced to do this and put them on plan consistently. Never have they gotten off that plan, ever. Like once you see how you respond to it, it's pretty hard to argue with results and how you feel, right? And I think that's really important. So, you know, if you've been somebody who's been sort of against this a long time, if you don't have your studio across the squat rack like Justin does, you know, find a way to sort of tease these in. And for those of you who say, hey, you know, time's an issue, you don't have to do all this at once, right? Maybe you have a scenario where you do have a garage gym, right? And maybe you say, I'll do 2 exercises a day. Great. That takes you, 12 minutes, something like that? Like, just fit them in. You know, you can just find a way to be consistent over the long term. It doesn't mean you have to drive to the gym, be there for 90 minutes and walk out the door. Like, you know, you can mold this in, just get the work done. And again, that going back to integrating into your lifestyle and your demands and your family, like those are all the things that has to be done. But if you just kind of just take a second, you can usually figure out a way to do that and get the results.
So on the strength training side, you designed, I'm not sure whether it's for strength training, but you designed a MOBO, which is short for mobility board. What do you have in mind when you designed the MOBO? What's the use case of the MOBO for a runner?
Again, let's go back to my analogy before when I said if you saw me in the gym and I was, you know, raising overhead and I just hit myself in the head every time with the weight, you'd be like, that's not safe. It cracks me up how many, not tens, not hundreds, but thousands of athletes I've seen who've come in with lower leg pathology, not just foot, like lower leg pathology, and their control of their foot and ankle was abysmal. It was horrible. And I said, we have to find a better way to get them to control their foot and ankle. So when we talk about the words pronation, supination, those aren't diagnoses, by the way, they're just motions. If I said elbow flexion, extension, it's just moving your arm back and forth, right? So pronation, supination is mean, can I guide my foot and ankle down to the ground under control, and can I guide it back off during propulsion? And so many runners cannot do this. And since they can't do that, they wind up, what's the first point of contact with the ground? Your foot and ankle. If there is a delay there in how they control that adapting to the ground, guess what we see upstream? All the timing of that reflexive power generation flies out the window. Okay. So you've got to get really good at controlling actively the pronation, supination, and then we have to integrate we don't train feet in isolation, right? We train them full body. So I need to make sure I give you an environment to train your foot where you feel things very well. So MOBO's hard, okay, not cushy. Those of you who've done stuff where your physio puts you on a little blue balance pad and says stabilize, and you're wobbling all over and your arms are moving.
Yeah.
Don't train that way. Okay. The reason why is the second your arms go up, you just showed me that you made it too challenging for your foot and ankle. You have to use your arms for stability. You're not training foot and ankle control anymore. You're just leaning and shifting your trunk. That's not helpful, right? So I have to make sure I like firm environments because your foot gets uniform sensation. Okay. It's important because training proprioception means I can train feel. Okay. The other thing it's got is MOBO has a cutout for your little toes and not your big toe. And the reason why is I want to get control over inside the muscles in your feet. Those are called foot intrinsic muscles. And by putting that cutout for your little toes, those muscles originate up in the shin. Okay. And lots of people, when I say balance, they try and grip and use their little toes to curl and pull off the ground. That's not how we run, because if you do that, you're taking your med head off the ground, and that never happens when you run. By putting that cutout in there, I force you to cue load over to your big toe. And we push the big toe down, we push the arch up. When you push the arch up, you control the position of your shin and your knee and your hip, and it all goes upstream, right? And the board itself has fins. You can move around in different positions, but if you put the fins in the even slots, which is where people spend most of the time, that's directly train that control of pronation and supination. Again, not just your foot and ankle, but controlling pronation and supination while you're doing a single leg deadlift, while you're doing a split squat, while you're doing some hip extensions, I mean, whatever, right? Like you can use hundreds of different exercises on a MOBO, but instead of saying you have to do 20 things, well, just put your MOBO in some of your exercises and get double bang for your buck, right? So it's hard for sensory feedback. The cutout little toes prevents you from using muscles in your shin, forces you to use muscles in your feet. And the fact that we train the full body, right, is a really critical thing. And so it's just trying to build a better environment. Again, I made this as a thing I thought would help, and I'm very humbled. It's helped tens of thousands of folks across the world, and they're in multiple elites training gyms, and pro teams across the globe have them, and it's been great to see it help so many people. And I just want to try and help people, and write lots of books, but I'm also happy to help make tools to help people do that too. So it's another way to sort of, again, like we said, we have to train the front side muscles, we have to train the back side muscles, you also have to train your foot and ankle. So it's something I put in, not as, quote, strength training, but more for that strategy stuff we talked about, right? So that skill aspect. And I put that in, a few days a week for 8 minutes a day, like really simple stuff. But just, again, research shows for things that are more postural control and skill oriented, we're going to do them often throughout the week in short dosages to really help make sure that we're, again, cueing those right reflexes over and over again.
If you're serious about running well long term, you can't ignore foot strength and ankle stability. Stronger feet and stable ankles improve balance, control, and force transfer, and that carries directly into how you run. Building that lower limb foundation makes you a structurally stronger runner. That's why Jay Dicharry created the MOBO board. It's a simple, highly effective tool to strengthen your feet and improve ankle stability, so your lower legs become more resilient. As a listener of the Endurance Lab podcast, you get an exclusive 10% discount. Head to moboboard.com and use code ELAB10 at checkout. That's MOBOBOARD.com. Code ELAB10. So the focus of using the MOBO would be towards strengthening foot and ankle stability as well as the muscles within the foot, which if you do just a squat or a lunge, you're not really targeting the muscles within the foot the same way as you would if you would use a tool like the MOBO.
Yeah. We run and walk forward, right? But your foot and ankle don't move forward. They actually move in diagonals. Okay. And so the MOBO moves in diagonal, and it's designed in such a way that you really kind of cue those foot intrinsics to work. And we know that, again, like we use the word strengthening kind of all the time, right? But it's more, again, the skilled recruitment, right? So let's just go back to kind of pull things full circle, right? You talked about the importance of being able to be a big spring for running economy. Again, if you're somebody who can't adapt the foot down to the ground very well under control, that means that elastic energy kind of goes all over the place, right? That slingshot analogy I used before, I have to pull a slingshot back, and then I have to keep that lead arm stiff and controlled, so when I release it, all my energy goes where I want it to, okay? Versus if I take that slingshot and pull back, and I kind of just leave my forearm limp, the energy goes all over the place, right? So being able to stabilize your foot and ankle is really important for transferring energy from joint to joint to joint, and that's what happens when we run. So control matters not just in terms of injury, but also in terms of performance, for sure.
And embarrassing experience for me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Foot control, do you think is a bit more important on trail running?
I would say, if you're talking about,
I'm going to tell you my embarrassing experience.
Oh, don't be. I'm embarrassed too. Plenty of stuff. Yeah, don't be embarrassed. I'd say this, if you're talking about specifically in terms of rolling your ankle, because there's more, there's obstacles in the trail,
correct,
right? So, yes, there is research to show that. So some people sprain your ankle once and that's it. You never sprain again. That's great, right? But some people, about somewhere between a third to 2/3, depending on the study you read, become what we call chronic ankle instability people, so that they keep re-spraining. Even if they don't really sprain, they just roll their ankle over and over and over again for forever. And if you're going to be in a situation where you're constantly on irregular terrain, you're more likely to roll your ankle. But if
you don't have the strength your feet to control it, right?
It's not just the strength, it's the timing. We actually did a study on this, and it was pretty interesting. So we found people who sprain over and over again. So when you're in swing, right, when your foot's in the air, going through the air, you would think that you don't want to land sort of this way on the outside of your foot, because the way you sprain your ankle is called an inversion sprain, where people roll out this way, right? So you would think you don't want to land this way, but we saw people who are the chronic sprainers, even in swing phase, where there's no load in the foot at all, their foot's already way over here, even in swing. Like it's not just strength, they completely lost reactive control of their foot and ankle. And the reason why it's pretty interesting, when you look at ligaments actually keep joints sort of together, but they also have nerves in them, and those nerves relay sensory information. And if you tear a ligament, you actually tear the nerve tissue inside as well, and the ligament will scar down and heal nice and strong, but the nerve information you got from that ligament that used to tell your brain where you were in space is gone. That doesn't grow back. And so it's not the strength thing we're trying to rebuild, but we're trying to improve that reflexive awareness of where the body is. And there's great research to show there's multiple pathways to sort of build awareness in your brain as far as how we move. And so when you recruit muscles, your muscle learns certain things of tone, right? So imagine if I told you to hold a 5 kilo weight, do a dumbbell curl, just in mid position, you would know how stiff you had to keep your arm just to hold it there, right? If you went more contraction, it would come up towards you. Less contraction, it would come away from you, right? So, but if you have enough contraction to hold it position, it's a learned behavior. You learn that over time moving. That happens for your foot and ankle, right? So if I can say, Justin, let's actually have you learn to actually control your foot and ankle, right, better, okay, build that control, pronation, and supination, I can upregulate the muscles in the foot and ankle that are working to give me more information of where I am. And that's the way we can actually help those people who sprain over and over again and help them stop spraining again. It's not from strengthening, but it's more from teaching them how to regulate tone within the muscle. I got a little complicated.
MOBO can do that. That's fine. And MOBO can do that. Or that's part of it. Okay.
We learn through movement. Like you study for a test, right? But we talk about movement, we learn through moving well. So the more we learn to move well, the better environment I put you in to practice good positions, your brain's learning every single time, right? And so it's an important thing to talk about. Like when you're doing any type of stability work, it should be challenging, but doable, right? Like, if I said, let's stand on a big Swiss ball, right, and do squats, like most people listening to your podcast would probably just fall over, right? And they get back on, they'd fall over. And get back on, that's not helpful, right? But if I said, hey, let's put you on a surface that may be wobbly, but doable, and do 20 reps or whatever, your brain goes, oh, okay, I'm figuring this out. And that's what I want to help you do. I want to help your brain go, oh, this is what I have to do to keep my big toe planted. This is what I have to do to keep my equal pressure across my med heads. When I do that, I also feel my hip work. I don't have to say one word. Your brain just taught you everything you have to know about moving well.
Okay, so the MOBO gives you that bit of instability, but it doesn't overwhelm you.
Exactly.
Challenge you to the point where you can actually handle it, but not beyond it. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
yeah, I didn't want to make an endo board or something crazy. Like, that's not the goal. Is to, again, how can I challenge you enough to have transfer into your sport? Like, no one is getting awards for being good at MOBO board, right? Like, you're getting happiness and success from doing your runs well, right? And so, if I can't, again, I go back to what I said before, if I can't see skill transfer into your goals, I wasted your time. And I made MOBO to see that skill transfer.
Okay, I'll link to that in the show notes so people can check it out if they want to. Yeah. So anyway, going back to my embarrassing story. So 2 years ago, I signed up for my first ultra marathon. It was 100K. And I've only done one marathon before that. And, during the winter, I was building up my mileage to get to the 100K ultra distance. The thing that failed to register in my brain was that it was quite a technical event. It was not just running on fire trails, right? It was literally rocks and roots and up and down. It was literally, I got my ass handed over to me. And my foot was pulled in so many different directions that I thought, oh my goodness, I have the fitness, but I just don't have that foot ankle stability to get through it. Yeah. I mean, I finished it within the allocated time, but way slower than what I thought I would. I crawled home in 20 hours. I mean, look, I told my wife before I started, like, I think my goal is 12 hours. At 12 hours, I was just at it. I just made it to the halfway point, and she's like, yeah, just, take your time. You'll be fine. So yeah, anyway, that was quite embarrassing. And after that,
never be embarrassed, man. They're all learning experiences, right? Like, you learn through screwing up. It's all good.
And it's so stupid because the name of the event is called Nordic Ultra Trail. Somehow I missed that ultra part and thought I'm just going to be running on smooth fire trails. And I got this, man. It's just like gravel and, no, it's not gravel. So after that, I kind of thought that, okay, I need to work on ankle and foot strength because just doing regular runs on the road is not going to help me in that regard. Okay.
But again, but you saw the importance and you took action and hope that's gotten better, right? But that's the thing. It's like, you only know what you know, right? All you know is your experience. And I think these types of things are great when they happen. I mean, you don't want them to happen in major races, right? If it's something you've been training for a long time, but it's like, we evolve, we learn. I think throwing new and different challenges at your body is a great way to stay involved and, getting push the needle,
Yeah, exactly. A year after I did 100 mile in the same event, and my foot was not the problem this time.
Yeah, there you go. Great.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about supination and pronation and stability shoes. I think it's quite popularized that if you either over pronate, you should be considering stability shoes. What are your views on that? And should someone actually consider stability shoes?
I would say a few things on this. One, stop blaming your shoes. And not you, but I will just say this: it drives me to no end. I will sit there and make, a long podcast about how to improve your body, or write a big article, whatever, right? And like a handful of people read it, and you do something involving shoes, and it gets like 100x results. People love to spend money and stuff they can just go buy and think that's solving their problems. That's not how the world works. I'm sorry. I will say a lot of runners have what I call a codependent relationship with a pair of shoes, right? You bought one shoe at one point in time, you had success with it, you tried something else and you failed, and you went back to the store and you bought 12 pairs of the same shoe you had before, right? Because you were worried about getting changed. Like, stop. Like, that needs to stop, okay? Like, again, you said yourself, I had this big engine and I had no stability in my foot and ankle, and it came to light during your very rocky technical run. And, a lot of runners will say, okay, well, I'm kind of getting by with this shoe. Maybe, but why not just put a better foot into the shoe that you're in, right? Like, shoes are pretty similar, right? Let's throw super shoes out for a second and not include those because it's a different set of rules. But most shoes test within a few percentage points of each other, okay, in terms of stability. When I talk about stability, I should mention, full disclosure, I've done validation innovation projects for about 11 different shoe brands across the world. So I do have data on a lot of these things. It's not my opinion talking. When I look at shoes from, let's say 2 shoes within one company's line, or, a shoe from manufacturer 1 to brand 2, whatever, like, we see differences in, single digits of a few percentage points here and there. If I said, hey, let's actually take time to improve, rotational control at your hip or foot ankle control or whatever, like, we see like double digit improvements in terms of stability, not stability of the shoe, stability of you as a runner, right? So, the biggest thing, and I know it's not sexy and it's not going to sell and nobody ever cares because nobody ever does, but they just want to go buy something. But, if you want to really have success, put a better foot into whatever shoe you're in. Okay. Now, that being said, if you want to talk about shoes, shoes should be as thin, firm, and light as you feel comfortable in. Okay. I do not mean everyone has to go out and buy a pair of Vibram 5 Fingers. It's not at all what I'm saying. But having shoes that are overly mushy or overly cushioned compress a whole lot. And when they compress a whole lot, they change that spring we talked about earlier, right? So you want to be able to have a little bit of ground feel for the ground, and you want to be able to, again, control your foot and ankle on the way down, and then off the recoil on the way up. A stability shoe by default, if you go back 10 years ago, we used to talk about using different type of materials in the inside of the shoe versus the outside of the shoe to give you, quote, stability. That doesn't really work. And the reason why is your foot, right? So everybody contacts with your foot in a supinated position on the outside of your foot. Some people might be heel strikers, some are midfoot strikers, some are forefoot strikers. Doesn't matter. Everyone contacts the outside of your foot when you run. And depending on where you contact, that pressure may come back a little bit or it might come straight forward. Don't worry. But it goes from the outside of your foot across and out the big toe. Okay. And that's not been shown in 1 or 2 studies. It's been shown in hundreds of studies. Every running study ever done has shown this. Okay. And so when your foot and ankle come down to the ground, they have to be able to adapt, all right, and to get that big toe down to the ground. And for a long time, the industry told us that putting a different density material on the inside of the shoe would actually sort of stop the foot from moving. The reality is the most deformed or most kind of flattened out your foot isn't actually during mid stance. It's actually just after the heel comes up off the ground. So all you have in contact with the ground is the outside ball of the foot, inside ball of the foot, and the big toe, not the heel. So this post they stick under your rear foot isn't even touching the ground at the point it's theoretically most needed. Like, it's not even on the ground, right? So the idea behind the dual density materials doesn't work. Now, in some companies, and they know this, right? Running industries, they understand what's been marketed towards runners, but they also understand some things because I work with them, other people work with them, and we tell them what works, right? And they've started to talk about, okay, well, let's just talk about like more guide rails where we just sort of help most of the motion move relatively forward and not so much lateral. That sounds nice. A lot of it's marketing. I think the issue is just, again, when there's too much cushy stuff underfoot, people wobble around a whole lot, and they get unstable. And if there's nothing underfoot, that might feel uncomfortable for some people. So find that happy medium. You want to find a shoe that feels comfortable for you, but gives you some sense of where you're on the ground, right? When you have those shoes, you feel like you're just walking on a cloud. That might feel nice when you're in the store, but I think we've all been there where it's like, here's an example. If you go to the store and you try on 3 pairs of shoes and you can't, it's like, I like all 3, you can't decide which one to buy the one that feels the firmest out of the ones you just tried, because you're buying a shoe to run in, not to walk in, right? And so, that run you had either on the treadmill in the store or around the block, or even if they let you go for a mile run, right? You're still pretty fresh, right? So, when you're tired, that's when that shoe is going to have more load going through it. And I want to make sure you can sort of, I need a shoe to make sure it's firm enough, right, to keep you tuned, meaning that spring tuning, right, to work well as you're running. So I'd say that's sort of for the trainer. That's sort of your everyday sort of trainer. I'd say find something in that category that feels like it's enough. Make sure it feels like it fits your foot shape. I'd say one of the simplest tests. I don't know if you've heard of Ray McClanahan. He's a podiatrist friend of mine, and I love this test he has. Again, runners have been told for a long time, buy these sexy, slim fitting shoes, like, stop. Okay. That's not reality. Okay. When you go to the store next time, pick out a shoe you want to try on, take the insole out, put the insole on the ground. I want you to take your foot, step on the insole. If your foot's bleeding out over the insole, like if you're kind of, if your foot's like sticking out over the insole, that shoe's too narrow. Put it back. Don't even try it on. You want to make sure, because when you run, every time your foot splays out, right? Every single step, a lot. Okay. And so if you find a shoe that you stand on and your foot's still so within the outline of the insole, then that shoe is actually shaped for your foot properly. And that's one of the simplest criteria I think that so many people overlook. That makes a huge difference, right? Because people talk about stability all the time. Well, what's more stable, a pyramid or a skyscraper? Skyscrapers are tall, but they're very narrow at the bottom. Right. Pyramids are very broad at the bottom, right? Like if you want stability, if your foot can splay out, guess what? You just got a whole lot more control over your body. If your foot's basically stuck in this kind of narrow position, good luck achieving stability, right? So that's a super simple fit test. Takes all of 10 seconds per pair of shoes, right? And you know right away or not if that's something you should consider or not. And that makes way more of a difference than any of the tech they stuck in the midsole.
You talked about heel striking, midfoot striking, and forefoot striking a short while ago. So let's bust that once and for all. Is heel striking a problem?
No.
And if someone is the heel striking, should they try to move away from being a heel striker towards being? Never?
No. So look, let's unpack that for a second. So notice I didn't hesitate. Okay, there is only one person, one diagnosis I would ever try and change foot strike in, and I say this to be completely full in this quote. That's people who have compartment syndrome. Which means the muscles are working so hard in the lower leg that they actually increase pressure and cause nerve problems. It's a medical problem. It's not just a running problem. That's something where I'll play with foot strike. But unless you have compartment syndrome, I never change foot strike ever. Why? Because the research shows us that even if we do change it, you won't maintain it. If I say, let's work on changing from a rear foot to a midfoot strike, you might do it for a few hundred meters, and then you'll go back to what you used before, right? You can't maintain it, right? You don't have the capacity, you don't have the awareness to. And, for those people who say, oh, well, let's look at what the pros are doing. Like, there's lots of foot strikes out there, right? Like, a long time ago, this is like probably 20 years ago, as a friend of mine, this is when foot strike just became really popular to talk about. And as a joke one time, he just put knee down video footage of this guy running, and this guy had a very prominent heel strike. Okay. And what I think most people would sort of define as like a very rapid rate of pronation. And the comment section, people are like, oh, this person's going to have all kind of lower leg issues and he'll never go anywhere as a runner. And he was a current world record holder in the marathon. Okay. Like, so, be very careful to judge somebody's foot strike as a capacity of a runner. It doesn't work. What does matter a lot is where your foot contacts in relation to where you are. Okay, so let's go back to that grandfather clock analogy I made before. That pendulum, right, that swings back and forth, it needs to be fairly equal in front and equal in back. Equal in front, equal in back. Now, if you're somebody who tends to swing your leg way out in front, and then you only get to kind of like vertical and then way out in front and vertical, way out in front, vertical, that's not helpful, right? That I do want to try and help cue you to contact a little bit closer to your body and to get your leg to swing more back behind you. That is worth your time as a runner for sure. Because again, remember we said you have to store the energy in the slingshot to fire the rock, and you have to what? Let go, right?
Release,
so if you're somebody who overstrides and never gets your leg to swing back behind you, you're not getting full recoil of that last energy, and you're wasting energy at that point. So plus, when you contact that far in front, again, that means your quad is actually going through more excursion, which means more work, and so it's like going back to the whole economy piece. So to bring this all home, great job with kind of synthesizing these things. Where you contact on your foot, not a big issue at all. Where your foot contacts in relation to your body, definitely worth your time.
Okay, so forget foot stride, worry about where your foot lands in relation to your body. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. For someone that's listening right now, most of us are very limited on time, right? And we're trying to fit in running and we're trying to fit in strength training. So from a practical standpoint, right after someone watches this video or listens to this podcast, what are the most practical first things that they can do in the week in the week after this? What should they start doing first? The small steps, the baby steps.
The baby steps. Okay, I'm gonna give you I'm gonna make every coach in the whole world angry because I'm gonna give you an entire training methodology in like 3 minutes.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay, so here we go.
Speed to results. That's what we want.
For the vast majority of people out there, okay, for the elites out there, you're all doing the same thing. what you need from a physiological training perspective, you need 1 to 2 runs a week, which are going to be at tempo pace. You need 1 run, and this gets a little complicated with how you structure your workouts. Let's say roughly once a week. Typically, I have people do 3 weeks on and 1 week off for these. But a VO2 max session where you're like going to the well and it hurts and you're suffering, okay? And that total time intensity of on time is 12 to 14 minutes long. That's it. Okay. If one of those
kind
workouts
of 4x4 session.
Yeah. One of those a week.
4x3. Yeah.
4x3. Yeah. Just you can 12 by 1, whatever you want to do, right? But keep. But again, the goal is really fast. Okay. So one of those per week, 2 tempo sessions per week. The rest of your runs are easy. And I don't mean easy for your training part. I mean easy for you. Like you're totally conversational. Like we can even talk this amount of detail, right? We're just like, hey, what's up? We're talking about training, talking shoes, whatever, right? So that's your physiological training.
Zone 2 kind of range.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. Okay. So that's your physiological side. So on the other side, I would like you to put in 2, what I call, so in one of my books, Running Rewired, I break things down. Again, you don't have to use my vernacular, but I break things down into precision training, which is that skill aspect, and performance training, which is we talked about kind of building that strength and power. Right. So skill capacity work, again, like people used to put in stretching before you run. Don't do that. Instead, take that 8 to 10 minutes, put it in footwork or MOBO or dynamic hip openers or something to teach your body to move well, right? Put some core rotation in, right? That takes 8 to 10 minutes, okay, pre-run. That's it, okay? Then 1 to 2 days a week in the gym, depending on, again, your age and then time of the season where you are, okay? But if you can do that, be consistent at that, you're going to do just fine. Like, so, this quote, other stuff we talked about, it's not just like stuff to take your time, right? It's with intent, right? The gym session you're putting in, again, you should be able to get in and out in 45 minutes easily. Okay. And maybe closer to 35 if you're, pretty savvy. So, it doesn't take much time, but 1 time a week for sure. 2 times a week if you're over 40, or if you have certain times of the year where you have less running volume. And then, the precision workouts, again, more to kind of build that skill of movement awareness, right? And build that just kind of like strategy we put in. You'll be so far ahead of the curve. And again, like that doesn't just last 1 week, right? You do that multiple weeks on end, and then again, like that thing I showed you before, get your consistency, get your sheet of paper out and go, wow, I've done this stuff, every week for the past 16 weeks. Like, I'm a different person. That's what I want you to get. At the end of 16 weeks, you shouldn't be going, has this made a difference yet? Like, something wasn't executed properly if you're saying that. I've never, ever, ever had an athlete in any discipline put on a strength conditioning plan that didn't stick with it for life. And I think I want that for everybody, right? Like, at the end of the day, we want to be healthy, right? And enjoy the ride and have a good time.
Exactly.
Like, and when I look at health, running's a wonderful sport for your heart and lungs, but running doesn't build strong muscles. It doesn't build resilient tendons. It doesn't build durable bone, right? And like, as you age, what do you have to do? Well, you don't want to have osteoporosis. You want to have strong bones,
Correct.
Right? You don't want to get tendinopathy. Runners get those as we age because we don't take care of our soft tissues enough, right? Like, and you lose lean body mass. So let's just reverse engineer it and put some time into that. And again, I use the word engine and chassis a lot, right? Like if your chassis is developing alongside your engine, you're going to be durable and you're going to run really well and maintain form under fatigue. But if your engine's writing checks your chassis can't catch, that's where 95% of runners live, right? And that's why people wind up just injury recovery. I'm like, again, going back to what you said earlier, stop the madness, right? Let's just break this training cycle and find out, hey, like, where are you falling apart? How can we fix this and stay consistent to make it better? And you'll come out on top every time, right?
Yep. Last question for this episode, Jay.
Yeah.
From your perspective, what does endurance mean to you?
Endurance is I would say the endurance is the ability to keep going, but I'm going to put an asterisk on that. With intensity. And
wow.
I think that's the thing that I think that most runners, especially masters athletes, get in trouble because they think, oh, I'm not as fit as I used to be. I'll just go longer. And that's fine. But I want you to change the definition in your head because I want you to be able to, yes, mentally push through barriers, but I want you to be able to go hard at a given intensity. And that's where I think most of us fall short. And, we start taking 5Ks off our calendar and 10Ks off our calendar. Why? Why does it run longer? Keep the intensity up. If you don't keep the intensity up, you lose the intensity. And I think that's why I reframe everybody's perspective.
Jay Dicharry, thank you so much. If there were topics in this conversation that you'd like me to go deeper into with this guest, leave them in the comments. If there's enough interest, I'll invite the guest back onto the show and dedicate an episode to a deeper follow-up conversation. Thanks for watching all the way through, and I'll see you in the next episode.